Jeff, you can really pull them in, can't you? Well, maybe it's me.
Maybe they're waiting for a little keyboard ditty from you, Vladimir.
A little what? Keyboard ditty?
You have a keyboard behind you, a little ditty.
Oh, yeah, right. The problem is I can't play. That's really pulling them in. Wow. Brian muted me.
It's not me in control here. Not that I wouldn't have, just to be clear.
All right, we'll give it about another minute, then we will get started. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So good evening. I want to welcome everyone. This is Jeff Baer, Superintendent, Los Altos School District, and glad you could make it tonight as we have this town hall meeting about beginning to return students to campus for in-person learning for the 2021 school year. I know there are questions on many minds about what school is going to feel like. Is it going to be fun? Is it going to be safe? Is it going to be engaging? You know, we have heard stories from around the globe that really tell us children experience that joy of learning and the social connections is why in school, and why that is so critical, really building those social connections and social skills. The presentation tonight is going to focus on the operation of the schools, the health and safety and well-being of all present, both staff and students while at school. And also you'll hear about what will be the same. We have just incredible teachers in Los Altos in both the blended and the virtual programs. There'll be a continuity in learning through our comprehensive learning plans that have been developed by our teachers. It'll be a well-rounded education that includes specials like art and living classroom and PE. Kids wearing masks, which you'll hear more about, the requirements, will still be able to connect socially and intellectually with their peers and with their teachers. But make no mistake, these are challenging circumstances, but there'll be much more in this experience that's familiar than is unfamiliar. We're prepared. We have adults on campus and thinking deeply about students returning and staff returning, their social emotional well-being and their educational success. I also realize in our community, we have a full range of perspectives on this topic of returning to school. Each and every day, I promise you, I receive email from opposite ends of the continuum, from why aren't you just bringing all students back right now to not a student should be returning to class right now. So we are filled with perspective on this, and we are working through that. We know it is a monumental challenge to meet the needs of our community at this time. We are up to it, but it is going to take patience and it is going to take perseverance. We are still working with the same staffing while we are trying to deliver on two separate programs. And we know that our staff is our lifeblood. They make this district what it is, and they have to be safe and prepared both physically and mentally in order for this to be successful. So Marcy, why don't you move to the next slide? Today we're going to talk about 4 broad areas, a little bit about a public health update, where we stand right now, look at the instructional plan, a look at the health and safety planning, and then allow some time for questions and answers. And if we aren't, we're scheduled till 8:30. If we don't have time to get to all the questions, we will get them answered if you send them in to us. We're working on responding to the many questions that have been prompted by the emails that have recently been sent by me. So some of you have received responses, some of you not yet, but they are coming. So next slide, Marcy. So on Tuesday, Santa Clara County moved into or experienced its 14th day in the sustained tier or red tier on the state's new framework for COVID-19. This means that we are out of the most severe tier, the purple tier or widespread, and we have remained in an improved standing for 14 straight days. And now we're at 16 straight days with that. So we, though we have been talking in recent weeks about 3 different pathways, we are now able to push aside the waiver. Even though we acquired that, we're no longer needing to operate via the waiver, and also the California Department of Public Health guidelines that allowed for very small numbers of students to return, and we can operate in this new status. So I have shared with you this continuum of dates when we anticipate returning. I will emphasize that these are target dates. These are by no means fixed dates. These could very well change. November is a, in the environment we're experiencing right now, November is a very long time from now. So certainly conditions could change. That might change dates, either for the positive or for the negative. So we will keep an eye on these dates, but these are the target dates. You can see them across that middle row. We do have our special day class populations returning on Monday to their 5 school sites. And then those will be followed on October 12th by students in transitional kindergarten, and first grade at each of our 7 school sites, elementary school sites in person. October 12th is the return date. One of the reasons for this town hall, it's critical that we have information from each and every family in kindergarten, transitional kindergarten, and first grade as to what their plans are. If they intend on being in the in-person or blended option, or if they're gonna be in the virtual option. And we're gonna talk about each of those options and get a better understanding of each of those tonight. But we do need that time in order to look at staffing, look at allocations that changes from one program to the other may require, and then allow our teachers enough time to make those changes as well. So next slide. Just a reminder that we are guided by requirements from both the state and the local county governments. These are really the 4 documents we turn to understand what our requirements are, both with students on campus and without students on campus. There are set health guidelines that we have to follow. We are adhering to all of these because it really is critical to keep our staff safe while they're on campus and our students safe while they're on campus. Next slide. So this is really what we're working on here constantly. It's this balance of health and safety of all involved with the knowledge that we are at our best when we have students physically in front of us in the classroom, right? So we want to get students back in classrooms. There's no doubt about that, not just for their academic well-being, but really at this time for their social, emotional well-being and growth. We know that peer interactions are critical to the development of students, of children as human beings, and so much is accomplished in those times when students are interacting with one another. On the other end of that is this recognition that we need to make sure we're doing this in a safe manner that is sustained over time. We do not want to be a school district that is open, then closed, then open, then closed. That continuity is not what we're after. So we are really focused on in doing this work in a safe, thoughtful, phased manner to ensure that we're, again, opening for the long term. Next slide. So at this point, I'm going to hand off to Sandra McGonigal to talk about some of the particulars of both the in-person and the virtual program. Sandra?
Thank you, Jeff. So I wanted to start with this slide. If you've been to a town hall or a board meeting in the past, you have seen this slide before, and it just really highlights what we value in education, in our student-centered education in LASD. This is what's happening in our classrooms. Our teachers have done a tremendous job. When I talk with colleagues around the county and around the state, our distance learning program is outstanding. So I'm so proud of our teachers. And this is what our teachers are attempting to recreate in our virtual world. So I want to make sure that our teachers get a shout out. But it's this idea of rich and purposeful instruction, teaching and learning, great relationships, this idea of making meaning together, which is how we process our learning. Learning is a two-way interaction. It is not one way. And this idea that we really value our learning being personalized, that we provide great feedback to students, and our teachers have been working to make all of these become a reality in our distance learning program as we had to start this year. They have been tweaking and learning new skills and really trying to make this vision that we have for teaching and learning come to life. Next slide. Thank you. So I wanted to share a little bit about what is happening right now, because I have seen in some of the emails and questions that have been coming in the last few days, a little bit perhaps of confusion on the part of parents not really sure what program their child is actually enrolled in. So I wanted to start from the beginning. So in August, we asked families, we assumed you wanted to start in that blended model, and asked you, would you like the opportunity to attend virtual school? So to make sure that all of our families know which program they are currently enrolled in, it's become a little more complicated, because while we anticipated to start in the blended model, we actually all started in distance learning in August. So your child is in the blended model if they are attending virtually their neighborhood school. Their classroom teacher and their classmates are from that neighborhood school. And the goal is, within that blended model and in our phased approach, that teacher and class will begin returning in person with our TK, K, and 1 beginning on October 12th. We had many families choose to start in the virtual school, and those students are in a classroom with one of our great LASD teachers, with students from across a variety of schools, if not all of our elementary schools. And the intention for virtual school is that it will remain open all year and an option for families and students all year long in a virtual realm. They have shared curriculum. They have similar, if not exactly the same materials. So right now, it feels a little bit seamless. The experience, if you're in the blended model, the experience your child is getting is the same that the virtual school children will get for the remainder of the school year. Next slide. So I know that some of our families, this is a big choice that you might need to make. And right now, we're really focusing on TK, K, and 1. That is the more urgent group that needs to determine if they want to remain in the model that they originally selected. So I want to take some time today, and we're going to kind of talk through what the blended model might look like. And after my portion, go into some of the health and safety and actually see what that might look like in our classrooms. So again, that blended model, because we value in-person learning and know, especially when I think of our youngest learners, that they thrive on being with their peers. So that blended model will be 2 days in person with their classroom teacher, and 3 days mostly asynchronous at home. And our virtual school will remain as is. So 4 days of that kind of scheduled live meets throughout the day, and 1 day that is mostly asynchronous that Wednesday for them. So we'll go into some details on the next slide.
So Sandra, I think to point out that everyone right now understands what the virtual program is. You are all experiencing it right now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Next slide, Marcy. Thank you. So if you are in or interested in moving into the blended model, each class is divided into 2 cohorts, a cohort A and a cohort B. Our cohort A students come on Monday and Tuesday. Our cohort B students come on Thursday and Friday. So I know this is a lot of text, but I actually want to talk a little bit about the different components. So for those in-person days, it's important you know half of the class will be present. Right now, when I see our TK, K, and first grade, we're talking anywhere from 7 or 8 students to, I believe, no more than 14 students. And that might even be a little bit on the high side. So we have a small number of students who will be in person on those 2 days. So much, especially for our primary learners, is learning classroom routines. Yes, we want kids to learn their academics and curriculum, but part of coming to school is actually learning how to do school. So especially in TK and kindergarten, and we're still solidifying, I know our first grade teachers would say this, those routines in first grade as well. So it's about learning those classroom routines. It will be rich in-person learning. Because we have this great advantage to start the year with such small groups, I would anticipate very little directed whole group instruction and a whole lot of smaller group, hands-on, building upon the learning that students are doing on their at-home learning days, and really taking the time to do that problem solving, that collaboration, and all of these things can be done within the context of our health and safety guidelines. We want to make sure that students have opportunities, and this is also happening in the virtual school as well, around social and emotional learning. You know, our classes online and in person will begin with a morning meeting. It's a critical component of our program, but especially now we want to make sure that students have that opportunity to slow down and connect in person in a safe way. We will be asking teachers, we have a training day with teachers tomorrow who are coming back to work on campus. We want them to really focus on those core content areas. So a lot of the specials that typically happen at school, from PE to STEM, those will remain virtual, and we're really focusing in on the core content areas. But that doesn't mean it's not fun and exciting at school. Of course, they will have recess and lunch with their cohort. And I think we'll be talking about kind of the details of that a little bit later, unless you want to chime in on that now, Jeff. But I know students do remain within their stable cohort for both recess and lunch. We certainly will be doing indoor learning, but are really encouraging teachers to do outdoor learning as well. We have, our principals are working on moving picnic tables, and we will be encouraging writing workshop and reading to happen outdoors as much as we possibly can. And of course, probably the newest addition to our in-person schooling world will be teaching students and reinforcing the skills of mask wearing, of predictable hand washing. I'm teaching students how to do appropriate hand washing and making it a part of our daily routine, and then what the distancing looks like within our classrooms. Do you want to talk a little bit about masks, or that will be later, Jeff?
That comes up later, so
Yep.
keep going on the teaching and learning.
Yep. So in-person days, we want it to feel as much like what you would consider a early primary experience as possible, staying healthy and safe at the same time. So when students are not on campus, so on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, those are their at-home learning days. And so they will have a daily virtual connection with their classroom teacher. We know that that's really vital. Teachers will have some flexibility of exactly when and how that will work within their daily schedule. And you've all experienced, or I hope you have, our comprehensive learning plans. We've gotten great feedback from parents on those learning plans that our teachers are developing, our coaches are developing. So students will be doing independent work, using those learning plans to drive their learning, both on screen and then more materials coming home for that off-screen work as well. We will be retooling our specials schedule, so students will have their PE on those at-home days, their computer science on those at-home days. Our art docent and living classroom program have adapted their programs to be able to have opportunities for kids on those at-home days. And of course, our teachers will continue to create schedules for students at homes to make sure that they have plenty of opportunity, especially in these primary grades, for break and lunch. And I threw up a little how might we there. We're really looking, the biggest worry I've heard from families is the the decision to make. It feels a bit like a sacrifice. And why can't I have my teacher contact all day, every day, or 4 days a week? And I really want to let you know that we are working within our own personnel of how might we better use our staff to engage kids on their at-home days. So that's a conversation we're having with principals, and we'll continue to have as we actually launch our in-person learning. And I also think it's a great opportunity of how might we engage our parent community to get involved on those at-home learning days too. Next slide, Marcy. It's the same slide in reverse. Important to know that those cohort B will have the same experience Thursday, Friday. I've heard several concerns from parents feeling like their child might be at a disadvantage educationally if they're in a B cohort as opposed to an A cohort because they're at the end of the week. It will not matter. Your teachers will ensure that kids are moving along at the expected pace and provide the support that's needed along the way. So it's not something that I want you to be concerned about. Next slide. So I wanted to go into a little bit of detail about why you might choose one program over the other. And I really do say I empathize with families who need to make a choice. And it's not an easy choice for everyone, but I also know it's a very easy choice for some people. So the blended model, why might a person choose to have their child in the blended model? You might make this choice if your child needs social connections. I know every child needs social connections, and I don't mean to be flippant about that. But I also know we have several students who are really struggling at home socially and emotionally, that they are missing out on that social connection. And if that is your child and you think that this is the choice because they need that contact with peers that perhaps they're unable to get in your current situation, that's something I want parents to pay attention to. You also need to make sure that you personally, family, is comfortable with the health and safety precautions that we've been talking about and will continue to talk about tonight. You want your child to have that typical or more typical primary experience. And perhaps the virtual realm is not working for you or your family. And especially you need to be able to support an increase of independent work at home. There will just be an increased demand on families during those at-home learning days. And it needs to be something that you have a support system in place to be able to manage. And I know that those are difficult choices for families to make, but that's kind of the decision that you need to make. The biggest, not the biggest, I would say a common question that comes in is around this idea of live streaming, and why can't we just live stream our kindergarten, TK, or first grade classrooms to families? And I've talked about this before, but I'm happy to talk about it again. I really want to make sure that our students who are choosing to come in person have the best possible learning experience for 2 days a week that they can get. And if you've ever been in a primary classroom, especially at the beginning of the school year, it's a tough gig. Our students are learning those routines. Some of them come with great schooling routines, others do not. And the teacher's attention, even when we have 8 to 14 kids coming into that classroom, I really want their attention to be on the students who they are engaging with in person. And we know that learning is an active process. It's not a passive process. And I know some school districts around the country, around the world might be choosing to do live streaming. I don't believe it's the best program that we can offer. We offer an outstanding virtual program for families who don't want to bring their child in, and we are able to offer this experience that gives them kind of the best of both worlds, with some great comprehensive learning plans and a really outstanding in-person experience. And that's really where I want our teachers' attention to be. The whole live streaming thing started it was one of the models we reviewed in the springtime. And it started as a college level model called the hybrid flex model. And it has proven even with adults that adults do not sustain when the professor is not engaging directly with them. If you're just watching somebody else learn, it is not the same as being an engaged learner themselves. So I just wanted to make that point tonight. Our next slide, please. Thank you. So why might you choose the virtual school? You've all been experiencing a little bit of what virtual school is actually like. And it is a great option for families. If you are not comfortable with the health and safety precautions and you prefer to keep your child at home, please do so. We're so happy that we can provide this option for you. Please know if you're at high risk or you've consulted with your doctor, please stay home and stay a part of our great virtual school. If virtual school is really working for your child, feel free to continue. I really think that that's important. If your child is connected with their teacher and with their classmates and it's working for you, feel free to stay. And I also wanted to add this piece in. If you need a consistent program in your life, virtual school might be a better option for you. You know, our blended model, we are attempting to bring children back to school during the middle of a global pandemic. And we have all sorts of plans and procedures in place. We have substitutes available. We've got everything we could possibly think of, but there certainly might be a time where the principal will be outside during drop-off and saying, first grade class, you need to not come to school today. Our teacher is homesick and we couldn't get a sub. So there's going to be some flexibility required for that blended learning groups, those blended learning groups. And if that does not work with your life, please stick with or consider sticking with that virtual school. Do I have one more slide, Marcy? I can't remember. Oh, I'm sending it over to Jennifer. Jennifer Kiker is our Director of Special Education.
Thank you, Sandra. Well, we are kind of the front runners here. We're really excited to be able to welcome our most vulnerable learners, our students who spend the majority of their time in a special education placement. So our specialist day class students are returning, the majority of them are returning on Monday. We've been working very hard on putting together the safety procedures so that they are safe, so that our teachers are safe. I want to give a huge thank you to our coordinator, Christina Murata, and our amazing teachers. They have done a phenomenal job in a short amount of time. We've been planning all summer, but when it does come down to the actual time, it takes a lot of coordination and collaboration. They've done a phenomenal job along with our principals and our our classified assistant staff have just done a great job. So they're ready and they're excited to welcome the students back on Monday. We've staffed the classrooms with our instructional assistants and some behaviorists to really ensure that it's a safe experience for those kids who are returning. And once the first part of this is also for our junior high. We are excited that we are allowed to allow our junior high students to come back in our specialty classrooms as well. And once students begin to come back onto campus a little bit more, we will be able to offer in our junior high programs some small group or individual in-person sessions as well. And there will be instructional assistance there for in-person sessions if that's needed as well. So we're very excited. It's happening on Monday. So that's good. That's going to be great. And we have also our resource specialist program. We've been supporting students virtually, both accessing their general education and separately with their IEP goals. Our instructional assistants in that program are phenomenal as well, really working in the classroom, Google Classrooms with students, individually with students, and then supporting with their goals. We are planning or in the planning stages right now of being able to offer also, once more students become onto campus, more individual in-person sessions for those students who are still struggling. We know that it's not just this one cohort of students that were struggling since the school closures in March, but we do have other students that are struggling as well. And so we are in the planning stages of being able to invite some of those students back as well. Next session. So we are also excited. We've started our in-person assessments as well. We had to stop assessing for students back in March, and so I think last week was our first week. We have a whole week under our belt now of assessing students. So that means our specialists are coming back, working in person with kiddos, following all the safety procedures to be able to work closely with students and to be able to start working on our timeline. So we thank parents for their flexibility and understanding as we start to get back into and working through the backlog of assessments that we've had. For now, we are prioritizing instruction in campus, bringing kids back for that quality instruction that Sandra was talking about. So we are limiting the amount of adults that we have on campus. So that means our specialists, our speech therapists, our occupational therapists, our vision, deaf hearing, all of those additional specialists that really make our special ed program are going to continue to be virtual at this time. Again, we are trying to limit how many adults we have on campus. We will continue with parent coaching and with virtual sessions. And then as we are bringing more students back on, if the student is still struggling, we'll be re-looking at if individual sessions are needed in person. Our behavior services are starting with us on Monday as well. They will be supporting students both in special day classes and virtually. And again, as more kids are coming back on, we'll be able to offer more in-person sessions with them as well. And our counseling sessions right now are going to continue remotely. So I think that is our update. We will be having a special ed related town hall in a couple of weeks so that we can kind of flesh out and explain to parents the next steps.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I think we're going to transition and get into, after setting some context for what learning might look like, get into how that translates for the health and safety area.
Sure. So next slide, Marcy. So want to run through a number of areas that we are looking at with regard to health and safety on campus and give you a snapshot where we can of what that's going to look like. So next slide. This is a slide you've seen before if you've attended and if you've read what has been sent home over the last few months. This is from the Santa Clara County Public Health Department's reopening guidelines, really demonstrating where they are emphasizing stable cohorting of kids at the younger grades, and at the upper grades at our junior highs and high schools, really emphasizing that that physical distancing as the key driver in how kids are grouped. Next slide, Marcy. So screening. Right now we have staff coming back on campus in various capacities. Each of us is required to do a self-screening, a symptom screen daily before arriving on campus. We are also providing free COVID-19 testing on a monthly basis through a partnership with El Camino Hospital. And we have many staff taking part in that. That rotates around several of our campuses every 2 weeks in order to make it accessible to as many staff as possible. We are suggesting, strongly recommending monthly testing, but it is available every 2 weeks so that we always have a sense of any kind of transmission within our community, in our staff community. So as we look at students returning, the symptom screening every day prior to the arrival on campus is going to be a requirement to coming on campus. We expect that these symptom check will be submitted. You'll be getting a text message and an email each day with a link to your child's specific symptom screening. And we expect that to be completed. We will be following up with families who don't do that. And it is going to be a requirement that you do that, as I said, to step on campus. And if it becomes a problem, we'll have discussion and understand what the roadblocks are to getting that done, because this really is a key to maintaining a safe community. This is one of those instances, and we describe ourselves as a community constantly, a tight community, and we are. This is one of those instances where the behaviors of some really do carry impact on the greater good, or the greater group of people. So symptom checking is going to be one of those things that's really emphasized. If there are symptoms present, or if there's a positive case of COVID or a close contact to a positive case, we are requiring children stay home, staff stay home, and that is per county health department guidelines. You'll need to notify the school office and or the district nurse, and we will follow up with that. So again, screening, critically important as we return. Next slide. This is just an example of what you're going to see on the on your mobile device. If you do it that way, you'll get this this screen. We are partnering with a company called OK to Reopen, and we're using that screening tool. So this is a sample of what you'll see. Next slide. Face coverings. Staff and adults have to wear coverings at all times while on campus. The only exceptions are when staff are eating or drinking. When we look to students, all students have to wear face coverings during arrival, during departure, and any area outside the classroom. Again, the only exception to that is when students are eating, drinking, or engaging in physical activity. In grades 3 through 8, the county health orders require face coverings to be worn in the classroom. In grades TK through 2, we are expecting students to wear face coverings within their stable cohort, within their classroom, to the greatest extent possible. We know that's going to be a learned skill, behavior for some. We really encourage you. We've sent home mailers a couple of times with the 10 things you can do to get your children ready for school. Getting students used to wearing face coverings is one of those things. We know teachers, especially in our primary grades, are going to need to build in mask breaks, find times where kids can be distanced and have a break from wearing a mask. But we are really going to be looking for students to be wearing face coverings in the classrooms at TK2 as well. Next slide. Let's see some examples where we're going to all be wearing those masks. There will be times when teachers get inside of that 6-foot distance to do various things. Hand sanitizer in this case. It could be checking on assignment in another case, but distancing is something we are going to be looking at as an expectation too. We talk a little bit more about that in a few slides. So next. So physical distancing, as I said, it's expected in classrooms, lunches at breaks, large gatherings. There are no assemblies, no field trips being scheduled. We are looking for distancing at arrival. Next slide, Marcy. And dismissal. If people have to come onto campus for some reason to the office, there are distancing expectations in the office as well. Much like when you go to the doctor right now, or much like when you go to the grocery store. I have a few slides of just some examples of what's going on our campuses. Here you can see that the main pathway, this is at Covington, is already prepared for separation, right? Traffic moving in one direction on each side of the sidewalk, as opposed to letting people move freely about. And you can see even to the left side there, as there's an off-ramp, if you will, to the left. We're looking to keep the flow of traffic separated in that case too. Next slide. In the classrooms, we are moving furniture out of classrooms, expecting smaller numbers of kids in classes, and kids seated at a distance, right? This is what we will be setting up in classrooms to ensure we maintain that safety and that health through the school day. Next slide. There's still going to be opportunities to gather. It'll just look a little bit different, where students are gathering with some greater space between them while teachers provide instruction. Next slide. And then even as you step into offices, there are going to be taped off areas in order to keep people at a distance when you need to come in. And there are plexiglass barriers on the counters as well. Next slide. Monica, I didn't give you this one, but Monica Sitters, one of our district nurses, maybe talking a bit about this if you don't mind, Monica. I think
of course
you know it well enough.
Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, so hand hygiene, another really important thing to incorporate, hopefully on an everyday basis, and especially now. So we have teachers working hand hygiene into their schedule. So there will be set times that we will have hand washing and or sanitizer use upon arrival, in between activities in the classroom. If a child touches their face or adjusts their masks, they need to hand sanitize before going out to recess, after eating, in between rotations out during recess, so with their cohort. But if they're moving from a station to a station, they need to sanitize in between, and after eating. So we have sanitizer that we have ordered for each and every classroom and room. We have portable hand sanitizer stations set outside, as well as portable hand washing stations set outside. So really, bathrooms will be designated. So that's another area for hand washing. So designated to certain cohorts, classrooms that they will be using. We are asking for minimization sharing of supplies within the classrooms. And if there is some need for a group of children to use something, that will be cleaned and disinfected at the end of the day, but we also will be asking students to sanitize or wash hands prior to that activity as well as after that activity. And then minimization of contact with high touch surfaces. So weather permitting, of course, we want doors open, we want windows open, teachers to prop open their classroom doors, have the light switches on so that multiple people are not touching those high touch surfaces in the classroom. And here is an example of just hand washing. So doing that vigorous scrubbing and getting in between nails, fingers, top and bottom. So teaching and reinforcing and modeling that for our staff and students. Testing and reporting. So as Jeff mentioned in a previous slide, we are doing regular free asymptomatic testing on our sites. We have partnered with El Camino Hospital District for this. It is a requirement that the district is immediately notified if a staff member, a student, or a close contact of a staff member or student has tested positive. So this could be within your household or outside of your household. Remembering that close contact here is defined as being within 6 feet of somebody for 15 minutes or greater. If we do receive a report of someone testing positive, that will be reported to Santa Clara County Public Health Department, and then contact tracing is initiated based on that. So those individuals are quarantined or isolated at home, depending on if they are positive or close contacts. And prior to returning, if you are a close contact or if you develop symptoms at school and are sent home, you cannot return to school unless you have been tested and cleared, so done the quarantine or isolation process based on your test results, or you have provided a doctor's note indicating an alternate explanation for the symptoms that you have and why a COVID test is not required. So again, if we receive a COVID-19 confirmed positive case, we need to notify the Santa Clara County Public Health Department, which we will do as a district. The school community will be notified. Of course, we will maintain confidentiality in that, but we will be notifying our school community, as well as quarantining stable cohorts and close contacts. So, you know, making sure that anybody in that cohort also of a confirmed positive case will go home and quarantine for that time period. And then knowing that if the child or staff member is with somebody in the same household of someone positive, that they need to quarantine for additional 14 days after that person completes isolation. So that could be anywhere up to 24 days. If it is a close contact outside of your household, then you are quarantining for 14 days after that last contact. We are setting up COVID testing for students as well. We are looking into being able to offer that at our school sites. So that's an exciting and great service for our community to see how we are all doing as a district. And once again, defining there at the bottom what a close contact is.
I'll step in here. We worked all summer and up to now on getting our campuses ready for safe arrival of both students and staff. Monica touched on some of the high-touch surfaces not being available for kids to touch all day if we keep the doors open, the lights on, etc. But we have trained staff, both custodial and teachers. Teachers can do some cleaning during the day, but our custodians will be doing the disinfecting on a daily basis with all the classrooms. In addition, we're very concerned about the air quality, so we've ensured that we have operable windows and doors that we can open. Ideally, when kids are not outdoors, that we have fresh air coming. That's probably the best way to get fresh air in. We've also done a complete inspection of all of our HVAC systems, every school, every unit. We've had an engineer come out and review all those, make sure they're working properly. We changed all of our filters and we'll be changing them on a regular basis every 90 days. And we will be not only cleaning the classrooms once a day with disinfectant by our custodians, but some of the common areas indicated here, the outdoor lunch tables and the restrooms will be cleaning before recess and after lunch, so twice a day. And then the outdoor lunch tables will clean after the recess and then after lunch, again, twice a day. I think we're very well prepared with our cleaning and disinfecting plans. And I'll let you go to the next slide, Marcy.
So I'll just say, this is Jeff again. I'll just say on that last topic of ventilation, Sandra mentioned, you know, that there may be in the blended model, there could be circumstances where school has to close, right? Which would be force everyone back into the distance learning situation. Another one of those I think of is as we come up on fire season, though we have had obviously some serious fires this summer. Our more typical fire season is upon us in the next 6 weeks or so. You know, if the air quality gets too poor and we have to close windows and doors on classrooms, that is going to cause a problem with the ventilation for the pandemic situation. So that is one of those situations where we would be forced to close and pick up distance learning if the air quality hits an unhealthy stage. The last thing I want to touch on is communication. And, we have been working to communicate as much as possible, as frequently as possible, as conditions update, change over the course of the last 6 months. And it is changing frequently. And I don't necessarily expect that to change itself. I think it's going to continue to evolve. as we work through certainly the rest of this calendar year, and in high likelihood through the rest of the school year. So I really encourage you to, I know there's a lot. I know people are getting all sorts of information from many sources, but we really do try to send out information as necessary, trying not to inundate, but really to turn up the volume on communication when it is important. So we'll continue to notify you of changes in public health guidelines. We do have a school reopening and coronavirus webpage on the district website that is filled with information. Many of the questions that I've gotten over the last 3 or 4 days, most all of those are found on the FAQ page of the school reopening webpage. So we will answer your questions and point you there so that you can see the abundance of thought that has gone into this, as well as the forethought into questions that are asked. Because as we get questions from you all as parents and staff, we frequently, if it's new, we will turn it into an FAQ and get it onto that page. So please spread the word on that as well, and point friends and neighbors to it as you hear questions come up. Next slide. So that's the end of the presentation. We want to leave some time for questions. I'll ask what the questions. We'll try to respond right here if we can. If we can't, we'll take your name and get back to you via email. And when you ask a question, it's super helpful. Having done a few of these over the last 6 months, it is really helpful if you don't package questions into a 6-question bundle, because it's really hard to keep track, and oftentimes all those questions aren't answered. So try to stay focused on those if you could. All right, Marcy, let's go ahead.
I apologize in advance if I mispronounce any names. Our first speaker is Sridhar Narayanan.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Thanks. My question is as the, in the best case scenario, if the county moves even further up the color codes and does, we do a lot better than now, is there a scenario where the blended learning model itself will advance to more days in school? Do you anticipate moving to more days in school, getting the entire cohort together, or is this the plan for the rest of the year, regardless of what happens? Thank you.
Right. So, yep, great question. We would love to get more kids into class and expand the cohorts. And I think as we move further along and gain some experience in this situation, and staff gains experience and confidence, I think we'll get there. I hope we'll get there. I did have a staff member ask me this very same question. I think last week, a week ago, and tried to get a date out of me, and I can't give you a date. I don't know when that's going to happen, as much as I'd love to put it out there. I hesitate to put an exact date on it, but it is certainly what we're hoping for, and what we are, we think about that in our planning as well. Just so you know, as we're looking at total cohort sizes and so forth, we want to make sure that we are in a place that, as we build those total cohort sizes, that should we get to the place where we can bring them all back together, we're still within a reasonable number.
Thank you very much. And thanks for everything all of you have done.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Elisa Pascual Trevino.
Oh, sorry, I was mute. Okay, thank you for all the hard work to everyone and for scheduling this session. I know this is focused mostly on the youngest, TK, K, and first, because they are starting first. But I wanted to ask for the blended model you have presented this schedule with 2 days at the school and 3 days at home with mostly asynchronous learning. And I wanted to confirm if that is for all grades or it is focused on the youngest.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Yep. So right now, yes, that is the blended model. I know at junior high school, we're working on what that possible blended model might look like. So there could be some variation there, but that is the plan of the 2 days in person with 3 days asynchronous. And then similar to what the previous speaker was saying, our goal, if you remember at the very beginning, we talked about this continuum. We hope we'll be able to bring back 100% of students on campus, but we don't know when we can do that.
Thank you. Just for the junior high, is there going to be a session once we get closer to the start date, which right now is November 2nd?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Tanya Beckerman.
Okay, sorry, can you hear me?
We
This is
can.
Tanya's husband. So after the first months of schooling, it is pretty clear to us that for our son, we have 2 kids at Springer. For our son, online learning isn't working well. He is very much unhappy and doesn't feel connected. So rather than encourage us to achieve consistency by focusing on online learning, what can the school district do? What can we as parents do to support consistency by opening up school with more time and more time that we can afford to have kids be physically present with teachers? Some of the suggestions that I've made and never got really a good response from the school is having a picnic, socially responsible distant picnic, so that kids can actually meet the teachers for the first time, because they've never interacted with a teacher. Has never seen his teacher in person. And that's a huge deal, in my opinion, which is different from where they were last year, where they've built a relationship with their classmates, with their teachers, and then had to continue with remote learning. This year, it's a lot worse because everything is new and they've never had an opportunity to interact with each other.
Sandra, do you want to talk about some of the thoughts, the things we've talked about that kind of get at that idea of socialization that's not necessarily just in classroom?
Why don't you start, Jeff?
Okay, you don't remember. Okay,
you
so
have
we
something
just
in mind, clearly.
So we've talked about just. I mean, your idea, you mentioned a socially distant picnic, right? Like trying to think of those opportunities that that provide the children that opportunity to interact in a safe way, right? In a distant way, to be able to even see someone make eye contact from a distance in a manner that complies with all the safety requirements that may not be in classroom school, right? But are there other opportunities that we can facilitate that still meet the health guidelines that get at what you're talking about, Mr. Beckerman? So yes, it's what I can say is it's something we're looking at. There are so many pieces in motion right now that is one of the many things that we're evaluating and looking at and making sure it complies with the county health orders. Sorry, Sandra.
Our next speaker is Aslam.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay,
Yes.
perfect. I have two quick questions. One of them is for people who decide to switch to virtual program, what is the classroom size look like, especially for younger kids? My son is in the first grade, and I'm wondering how the classroom size for the virtual program. Also, if you decide to switch from blended to virtual, do you have any plans in terms of helping with the transition, like meeting with the teacher beforehand so that they get to know each other a little bit, which was done in the blended program previously?
Yeah, Jeff, you might have more accurate numbers, but I think our virtual classes really mirror at most schools what our blended classes look like. And again, depending on school and grade level, they vary from pretty tiny to a typical school size. I think you said your child was in first grade. You know, I don't think many, if any, are over 25 students. And then as for just deciding whether or not you might want to switch programs and move from blended to virtual, we are working on kind of a transition process for both for teachers. So how do we make sure that the current teacher gets some information about a new student midway through the year? So that's one piece. And then we also want to make sure that our students feel connected, that they have an opportunity to perhaps say goodbye to the class that they have been spending some time with, and then have an opportunity similar to a beginning of the school year opportunity to meet one-on-one with the classroom teacher virtually, and to get to know the students. And so we are working on really solidifying those pieces, but know that it's very important.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Laura Gao.
All right, Laura, before you get started, we have about 13 or 14 more speakers. So I'm gonna say Yvonne Hildebrand. Oh, nope, Chen Attar is gonna be our last question. That'll take us well past 8:30. If you have questions and you're not, you don't have your hand up yet, please send them our way. You can send them to superintendent at lasdschools.org, and we will try to get a response to you as quickly as we can. So Laura, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No worries. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. I was hoping that you could comment a little more on what the drop-off procedure is going to be for children. I, as the parent of a TK child, am kind of wondering, will I be allowed to access the school from the back entrance? Can I linger at the playground, or do I need to get off campus as quickly as possible? That sort of thing. Thank you.
Want me to chat about that one?
Yeah, go ahead.
So our drop-off procedures will probably look quite different than what you might have thought about dropping your TK child off. So we really will be asking parents not to enter the campus. And we will be working with our TK, understanding that the TK drop-off is probably one of the most challenging drop-offs at the beginning of the school year. So really it might become a more staggered drop-off than we originally intend. But there will be a space, and the principal at your specific school site will actually go through with you those drop-off procedures and the expectations. We have multiple entrances at each of our school sites. We want you to be wearing a mask, and your child will be wearing a mask. You will maintain your distance, and our TK time will be a different drop-off time than our other grades who are entering. Anything to add? Aaron, do you have anything to add?
I'll just add one thing, is that we gave you the higher level district expectations and requirements. Each of our schools, all 9 of our schools have built out site operation plans based on the Los Altos School District requirements that are based on the Santa Clara County Public Health Department requirements, because we know that each school site has a bit of a different setup, right? Where the entrances and exits are, where the student restrooms are, playgrounds, etc. So principals will certainly be working with initially here parents of TKK and grade 1 families to make sure you really understand the implications of the school site operational plans, in addition to working right now with the special day classes as they return to campus on Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Jim Zangi.
Yeah, hi, thanks for taking the question. There's actually, Jim is here, but I'm his wife. So basically, just to give you a little bit of feedback, the virtual school system is just not working for our kids either. So I totally agree with the speaker who asked the question earlier. I've seen my happy-go-lucky 10-year-old child become totally withdrawn. I'm really concerned about his mental health. There is absolutely a disconnect between the schools, the kids, and just basically learning. And we're very busy full-time parents. And I feel as if I should give up my job and just become a teacher and homeschool my kid. So that's not going to happen. So I was just wondering, we are seeing kind of kids going to after school programs, instructors there taking sport classes. There has to be a way to get the kids back. It has to be sooner rather than later, and it's just not working out. And I really hope, is there a way that you can have the blended program where you've got 2 days of in-person schooling, but 3 days of asynchronous learning? We just have 1 day of that right now, and it's completely chaotic. The kids just, they're not adults, they're kids. They need to be taught. They need to be taught by teachers. And having those 3 days of asynchronous learning, it's just not going to be good. The kids are going to be so behind other countries where they've gone back to school. So I would really encourage you to get the kids back to school, and we can support you in any way, any way you need that transition. Could you try to get them back, even with the blended model, increase the number of days, reduce that, asynchronous, or, do whatever, it's just not going to work. They're not going to learn on their own.
Yeah, it is. You tapped into, I'll go first, Sandra. Yeah, you tapped into the challenge, right? The trade-off that is present, right, in getting students back physically on campus requires the attention of that child's classroom teacher, right? Whoever's in that cohort. And it's just not possible right now for our teachers to kind of do double duty and be the asynchronous teacher and the synchronous teacher at the same time and do a quality job with either group. It's just too much for them to ask for that to happen and have it done well. So we're moving in the direction. I hear you that you want it moving faster. I understand that. And we are, we're building a plan to get kids back to school. Is what I can say.
Okay.
I know you're still listening, but we do, if we can help, it would be if your child is struggling, and this goes for anyone, any parent and every parent out there, if you see struggles with your child from a mental health perspective, we have resources to assist. So all you need to do is either reach out to your child's teacher, reach out to your child's principal, and we are here to help. We do have resources available. Thanks.
Our next speaker is Bimpi Adesina.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you guys so much for this forum, for taking our questions. I just had a quick question, please. If you could please clarify for us, when our children do go back to school for the blended model, which is what we've opted for, what happens on Wednesday? Like there's a cohort A going in Mondays and Tuesdays, and then the cohort B going in Thursdays and Fridays. Is the Wednesday sort of the every other week situation, and then they get early dismissal? Sorry, I'm a little confused about that. So just trying to plan ahead.
Yeah, thank you for your question. Wednesday, whether you're in virtual school or in the blended model, will really feel the same as it currently feels. It's a dedicated day, so teachers will have that check-in in the morning with their whole class, both A and B cohorts together virtually. But that day is really dedicated for teacher prep and planning and collaboration time, which is so critical right now as they're trying to manage both worlds. And in addition to that, we will have our specials and additional great offerings available for students on Wednesday, but it is a mostly asynchronous day, just like it is right now. Although
Okay.
your special schedule may change once students return to blended.
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Charit Rosenberg.
Well, it's Zahi Rosenberg, Sherry's husband. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
So
Yes.
I have a couple questions. Number one, will we be able to, once you guys have all the classroom organized and geometrically prepared for the seating assignments, and I know you showed a couple samples of pictures. Is there a way that we can get a schematic, like a picture, photo of the designated classroom that our kids are going to be in the blended program, so we have the mental thought to kind of think about the strategizing of how it's going to look? Because I know with very limited access for parents on campus this year, it's really important for us to understand the geographical perspective of the classroom size. Now, I know classrooms at Loyola they're not small, but I envision that you're going to eliminate some of the furniture and the cubby holes in the back to expand that space there in order to produce a little bit more sitting space for those 12 to 13 students that are going to be sitting there. Is that a possibility to prepare like a manual, or like a schematic photo of our designated classrooms, so we can think about it, where our kids are going to be sitting at, what the elements of direction are going to be like, where they're going to have to stand in order to wash their hands, and who's going to stand behind them, and where they're going to stand. So I think that's going to give us a little bit of an ease of ability to understand the geographical location of each kid in the classroom. Is that a possibility to get that done before the blended program starts?
That's an interesting question. I haven't heard it before, but I understand what you're asking.
Yeah.
Let me, Marcy, can you take down Mr. Rosenberg's name? And we know his children at Loyola, so easy to find. And I will, let me give that some thought and figure out if that's a possibility.
And
I appreciate the comment.
You're very welcome. And then I had another question, and you mentioned that there might be an instance that one day we drop our kids off at school and you say, oh, we couldn't get a substitute teacher that day, and the kid has to go back home. Is there a contingency plan for those like that, just in case? Because I don't want to have my kid have a sick day because the teacher is sick, and God forbid, everybody needs to stay healthy. But I mean, is there like a contingency plan where my daughters will, go back home, but not sit there and like watch TV all day afterwards, but have some sort of like backup plan, to, hey, your teacher's out sick for a couple of days. This is like the, instructions that we have for that specific element. Do you have a contingency plan in those elements?
Yes, I would say the goal would be that if that needs to happen, that it would feel like what virtual school or what distance learning is feeling like right now. It could be that the principal jumps in and is doing the morning meeting. It could be that I'm running the morning meeting, but we wouldn't want that to be a non-instructional day for students.
Fantastic. Thank
So
you,
it
Sandra.
might not mirror it exactly, but we want to make sure that it is a day of learning for kids.
Thank you all. And if I think of any other questions, I'll reach out to you guys via email, and then we can kind of keep the discussion open.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're very
Our next speaker is Stephen Sanislow. I'm sorry, Peter. Stephen lowered his hand. Peter Bergstrom is our next speaker.
Hi, this is Tracy, and Peter's with me. He's my husband. My question is similar, but maybe more long-term. So is there a contingency plan for the blended program in case a school or class has to be shut down for reasons such as a COVID case is found, the air quality is bad, or, you know, like someone needs to quarantine for 14 days, like a longer term? So is there a format that maybe, you know, a contingency plan that the people who are at home can log on to do the learning?
Yep, absolutely. The gold of our plan is really the ability for it to flex between in person and at a distance. So if the entire class or a cohort had to quarantine for 14 days or whatever the amount of time is, it would go back to what it feels like right now for you in distance learning. And that may be with the teacher that you expect, and it might be with a substitute teacher.
Sounds good. Thank you so much.
Yep.
Our next speaker is Chris Latko.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
I'm wondering how you're going to be able to stagger recess and lunch so that cohorts do not commingle.
Yep, great question. So depending on the school, right? They each have, as I described, they each have a plan, right? And cohorts are going to be assigned play areas that may rotate during the course of the week or the course of the month, but kids are going to be limited to areas in which they are assigned for play on a given day. Anything to add to that, Sandra?
I
Or
don't know
Aaron?
or if Monica has been reviewing plans.
Yeah, Monica, you've been reviewing the various plans. It's true.
Yes, and they're moving picnic tables, you know, creating areas for cohorts to stay together, eat together, and then go into their relative play area. So it all depends on the site, you know, site specific, but that stuff is being handled and being reshifted so that we can maintain the stable cohorts and have seating and play areas to support that.
Our next speaker is Eunice Lau.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So just would like some clarification so that just because I have 3 kids, and you're mentioning that the PE, when they go back to school, is going to be not on the day they are in person, kind of the, am I right? Kind of the day that they are doing it now, virtual. So does that mean if they are a particular cohort, say A, then the PE will be 2 days in a row, Thursday and Friday? Or is it tapping into Wednesday? Just want to get an idea for planning, that's all.
Yeah, it would be either you'd have 2 sessions either on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. If you were in the A cohort, if you were in the B cohort, it might be either Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday.
Okay, so we'll know when closer to that time. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Our next speaker is Philip Okafor.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to start by just thanking you all for all your efforts. My question is a more practical one. So, what's the policy if, I know you talked about parents beforehand using the app to complete the screen as to how the kid feels. What happens if their kid's coughing, sneezing, having a fever in school?
Oh, Monica, perfect question. We got that, Mr. Okafor.
Great question. So if your child shows signs of illness and there's no documented reason for the illness, so it's not allergies that we know of or any other condition that we know of, they will come to the office. We have a designated space in the office for children who are presenting with illness. We will call home, they must be picked up, and in order for them to return, they do need to follow up with their provider, and so the provider will guide if that child needs to be tested or if the symptoms are based on another reason and why testing is not required. So we will need some form of documentation prior to that child returning this year.
Okay, thank you.
Our next speaker is Michelle Morris.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you so much for all the hard work that you've done. I'm so happy that my kid can go back to school. I have a few questions and I'll just try to make it short as possible. So what I heard is that speech therapists and OT and all the services, I understand that they're not going to be in person at the beginning. Do you know when they will be in person at the beginning, in the future? And it seems like the behavioral therapist will be in person. Is that correct? That's my first question. And then
you want me to answer that first?
Yes, please
Okay.
answer that first.
So that first, yes, the behaviorists will be in person.
Okay.
And then depending on who the specialists are that support your student, the scheduling, might change a little bit. And as far as, once your child is in class, they'll also have the support of the aides and the behaviorists to be able to help them access the virtual sessions with speech and that. And so they'll be doing a lot more coaching. So we will be looking and evaluating the effectiveness of that. And then also looking at how many folks are on campus and when we can safely bring folks back. So like everything in my business, it'll be an individual probably decision.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. And then next is very probably specific. I was just wondering if there is any protocols around like toileting in terms of like disinfecting, like because each student will be, throughout the day using the toilet, right? Like, are there any protocols? I'm asking this question because my daughter went to, private preschool during the summer, and they had a very strict kind of protocols around toileting. I just wanted to know if you guys had anything like, disinfecting after each child. Or another thing is, I'm also concerned about like if you guys have a lid on the toilet, so like when you flash it, like the lid is actually down so that it doesn't aerosol around the toilet. If you understand what I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe Monica can help about that. I think each of our cohorts are assigned certain bathrooms, and so we're not going to have, and especially since when our kids are coming back, we have such a small amount. They're not going to be multiple kids in the bathroom at the same time. It's not, and I don't believe our toilets have lids, but do they, Monica? I'm not sure.
I don't believe they do not. Yeah, but there is a disinfecting schedule that will happen more frequently throughout the day. It won't be every time each child is in the bathrooms, but it will be happening more than it has.
Yeah, and I think we're just talking with our teachers about making sure that bathrooming is being spaced out between students right now.
Oh, okay, thank you. And one last quick question is based on somebody else saying like, if somebody's have 6 symptoms, you guys have to wait for the doctor notes, and I understand fully. In that case, while we are waiting for that doctor's note or COVID testing, are we supposed to be sent home, all of us? Like meaning not just the 6th child, but the whole cohort until we know what the symptoms were?
No, so we will quarantine a cohort based on the results of the test.
Okay, so until you know the results, those kids are going to keep going to school, or are you going to start quarantining right away based on the symptoms?
So we quarantine based on positive test results.
Okay. So the other kids will keep going to school until the other person who had the 6 symptoms come back and say, we have COVID or whatever it is.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. That's it. Sorry about that. I'm good.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is Leanne Bacall.
Hi, I have two questions. The first one's, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes,
Okay.
go ahead.
The first one's super simple. Monica, you mentioned a couple times that students will be required to wash their hands after they eat. My perhaps even bigger concern is that the students will be required to wash their hands before they eat, whether it be snack or lunch. And specifically asking that for the older kids, will they be sort of mandated to do that? I know that little kids often are, brought and have scheduled times like a TK, but quite honestly, the 5th and 6th graders probably would skip out on it if the teacher didn't enforce it. So that's simple, but will that happen?
Yes, that's going to be incorporated into the routine of the classroom. So before students are leaving the classroom, they are performing hand hygiene before they leave.
Okay. Will they be doing like a spritz of Purell or similar on their entry into the class?
Yes.
Okay. And then my more complex question, which the last speaker touched upon, I guess it's complex, but if you have a child in an individual cohort who notifies the school that they or a sibling or a parent has either come down with COVID or, as the questionnaire typically asks, been in contact with somebody with COVID. In that scenario, are you sending that cohort home?
So that would be considered, so the child themselves would be considered the close contact. So that child and the siblings of that child would be quarantining at home, but the cohort wouldn't necessarily quarantine unless the child themselves were positive. So the cohort would be considered a contact of a contact.
I see.
So they would not need to quarantine.
So the cohort is only quarantining if the child in that cohort tests positive.
Correct.
And if that child alone needs to quarantine because of a contact, that child, let's say they're cohort A, so they're usually at school Monday and Tuesday, and now they cannot be, what will that child do on Monday and Tuesday when their class is in school and they're at home for 2 weeks?
Yep. So that child will kind of toggle between cohort A and cohort B virtually. And I have no doubt that our teachers will do an extra check-in with a student who is really not getting that in-person instruction that they signed up for, to make sure that they remain on track until they can rejoin the class.
Right, because there's not going to be any synchronous distance learning available at that point, right?
Right. Well, there will be a daily check-in and some specials live, but yes, not like you're experiencing it right now.
Okay, sorry. And that child who's home for 14 days, will you require a test after the 14 days, or if they're symptom-free after 14 days, they may return to school?
So that is so yeah, there's a whole logarithm around that. So basically, if they're a close contact and they don't develop symptoms, they need to test on or after 7 days is the requirement for the county. If they become symptomatic and they're a close contact, then we're asking for testing right away. And then based on that child's test results, we'll be able to identify what their specific quarantine period is, as well as know if we need to quarantine their cohort.
Got it. Thank you so much. Sorry, I know it's complex, the second question.
Yeah, we'll be walking through it with, hopefully we won't have that, but if we do, we'll be walking through each and every one of those in detail.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much.
Our next speaker is Yvonne Hildebrand.
Unmute yourself, Yvonne.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me? So sorry.
Yep.
Okay, I have a last quick question. Is about the practicality, about the lunchtime. So, if, the cohort will stay in the designated area outdoor to have lunch. And from what I understanding now, during the elementary schools in LASD, some parents will be recruited to be the lunch ladies. So now I would assume not a lot of people can be like a volunteer on the school site. How can how can the teachers or some other, related staff to manage the kids to have social distancing? During lunchtime, of course, maybe the lunchtime, they may provide them really 6 feet away from one another to eat, but after they eat, how can, we ensure the kids will have social distancing during the lunchtime? And will there some kind of like engaging activities provided by the class teacher, or just the kids will be like the old days, they just do random things on their own? Thank you.
Who's best to answer that one?
Monica, do you want to take
I can take that. Yeah. So as the guidelines are currently stated from the county, so it's really about the stabilization and staying within that cohort. So there is that understanding that although we are trying to keep children 6 feet as much as possible, especially within the classroom setting, in an outdoor setting, there will be times where they will be within 6 feet during that playtime area. And the guidelines do allow for that to happen, but they really have to stay with that same group of kids at all times.
Dan, can I ask?
And wear their masks.
Okay, yeah, that's the thing I want to ask.
Yes.
Is about wearing the mask. Then
Yes,
yes,
go ahead.
Please, Monica. No, you continue, please.
Right, so after they finish eating, yes, putting the mask back on and then going out to finish out their lunch period.
And can I make a little suggestion? Actually, I know that it's all, we parents have to get, involving our kids to try to learn how to do all the precautions before they really return to school. But, now as still we are online, everyone assuming, in the virtual classroom, can the teacher started to really give them some concepts? I know that thank you for Sandra, arranging all these complicated curriculum, but somehow this is crucial. Put it this way, somehow the kids will listen to teachers better than parents in some extent, and teachers will be the right persons telling them now you're prepared to go to schools. I hope you guys can teach them some concepts or showing them some videos we were doing on our side, but it would be great that you guys can help on that side, asking the teacher. I know you guys have tons to do, but it will be very helpful that get the kids to be on the right mindset and really make sure everyone have a safe, happy, school environment. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah, I think it really is a partnership. We are hoping that families at home can be starting those conversations and doing some practicing of the hand washing, of the mask wearing, all of it. We will be talking with teachers tomorrow and providing them some additional resources also, from social stories and videos and all sorts of things to be able to actually, once they're in with us, and even practice virtually leading up to coming back to school in person. So it will be a team effort, Yvonne, no doubt about it.
Thank you. And one last thing, can I say one thing? Earlier, there's a gentleman, he mentioned to ask about a very interesting question, according to Jeff comment, the geographical picture of the classroom. This is something for me, I would like to know too, because my youngest kid is going to be, going to go back to school in the middle of October because she's a kindergartner. Thank you. That's it.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
And Yvonne, what you said just made me think of, reminded me of something else. One of the things that's just crucial as we return is everybody really buying into this idea that what we do is going to affect potentially hundreds of other people within our community. So we have put together, and if you, as we move toward this reopening, we are going to send to all our families It's kind of a document that's really outlines the commitment we need everyone to make in order for us to be able to keep everyone safe and keep schools open, right? Really focused on being aware of what the county expectations are, the importance of mask wearing, and just the impact that each of our behaviors, mine included, has on the entire LASD community. And as we bring more people together, the more important this becomes. So you'll be seeing that in your inbox. We're going to actually send it out through InfoSnap and ask you to kind of acknowledge that you saw it, and you can get behind this and that you're committed to this. That's going to be for parents and families, and we're going to ask that of staff as well, right? Because we are as interconnected as we ever have been in this situation.
Our final speaker is Shan Attar.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi. So I'll make it short. I know we're all wanting to continue with our evening. So at the moment, the plan is that the blended program is 2 days a week in school, and then 3 days a week of basically worksheets with no live instructions. I wanted to ask if you have considered live streaming, meaning that when cohort A is in the classroom, cohort B can see the class and then be part of the schedule. Well, this probably would not be the whole day, but several times a day, just to maintain some kind of a routine or a schedule and just help the kids see each other. Is that something that you've considered doing? I've actually seen this happening, and it seemed pretty successful. And it doesn't, nothing needs to be changed beside a big screen in the class.
Thank you for your question, Chen. It is an often asked question. It is something we've considered, and we've looked closely at it. The way we want our teachers to be teaching and interacting with students when we actually have them for 2 days only in the week is really not conducive to live streaming. I don't want our teachers who are working with our in-person students to be distracted or engaged elsewhere, because that time is so precious for our students to be in person. So we certainly want to maintain connection. It's important for the class to maintain connection, so we will be talking with teachers about that. It's important for teacher to maintain connection with their students each day, but we are not planning on live streaming content instruction to our at-home students.
Right, so that is going to wrap up our questions. I know Elizabeth had her hand up, Joy had her hand up, and there was one more. Please send those emails. If you have sent an email in the last few days, we are on those. We have just gotten a large number, so you can expect a reply. It's just taken a little bit of time. Please remember, parents out there of transitional kindergarten students, and first grade students. Monday is the deadline for letting us know if you want to make a switch. You can actually expect an email as well from your school principal asking you this question as well and reminding you personally of it, because we want to make sure that everyone is making an informed decision here and not just getting kind of herded into something that they weren't aware that was going to occur. So this is really important, because you're really the person in the position to make that best decision for your child, and knowing what your child needs and knowing how your child is responding during this really, really difficult time. So with that, I want to thank everyone who attended, and big thanks to our staff who was here as panelists. Really appreciate it. Thanks to our board too. It's great to see you all. All right, have a good night. Thank you.
Everybody.